Welcome to the Video Professor's Computer Learning Series on CD-ROM. This is the same great lesson that is found on our videotapes. This CD lesson window will always play on top of any application, so you can follow along step by step to learn the program. We have packed this CD with information, and sometimes move at a pace that is faster than you'll be able to follow along with. To help you with this, we have designed the CD to work just like a VCR. You can pause, rewind, or fast forward the CD to learn each part just by clicking the appropriate buttons. From the Table of Contents menu, you can select or review any part of this lesson instantly. For your convenience, a Video Professor icon has been added to your desktop. To view this or future lessons, simply put the CD in your drive and click on this icon to start that lesson. Now, to get started, simply click on the menu item you want to learn. For best results, we suggest you start at the first item and work your way through to the end. And welcome to my lesson on Access 97, one of the most popular and powerful database programs in use today. Because Access 97 works within Windows 95, it is important that you understand this environment. You should know how to use the Start menu to open an application program. You should also know how to use your mouse and keyboard to select options from pull-down menus and dialog boxes. If you don't know how to accomplish these actions, I strongly suggest you see my series of lessons on learning Windows 95 before starting this lesson. In this lesson, we're going to help a young entrepreneur named Eddie organize his video rental store's tape inventory. By helping Eddie, you'll learn how to create a file that holds the various objects and controls contained in a database. You'll learn how to build a database table by creating fields and manipulating their properties. You'll also learn how to enter and edit database records. In addition to those skills, you'll discover how to create and modify a database form, which allows you and other users to quickly enter new records and edit existing ones. Before going any further, I'd like to introduce Suzanne, my student helper for this lesson. Simply follow along with her and you'll be using this program in no time. Later in this lesson, we'll be saving our work to disk. Suzanne and I will save to a floppy disk to avoid cluttering up the hard drive. I suggest that you do the same, so make sure you have an empty, formatted diskette on hand before continuing the lesson. Suzanne, open the Start menu. Open the Programs menu, and then click on the Microsoft Access Program title. It's the one with the key icon next to it. Viewers, if the Microsoft Access Helper opens on your screen, close it. And since we want to spend some time exploring the environment before we create a database, click on the Cancel button to close this dialog box as well. The Access screen has elements that are specific to this application, as well as others that are inherent to all Windows-based programs. At the top of the screen is the standard Windows 95 title bar. It is a basic feature of any Windows application. It lists the application's name and the file name of the active document. On the left side of the title bar is the Application Control menu. Click on it, Suzanne. This menu contains commands to control the size and position of the Access window on the Windows desktop. It also allows you to close the program. To close it without selecting a command, simply press your Escape key twice. And in the far right corner are the standard window sizing icons: Minimize, Maximize Restore, and Close. Viewers, if your Access window does not fill the entire screen, click on the Maximize icon now to enlarge it. Directly beneath the title bar is the menu bar. Its pull-down menus give us access to every command available to this program. Suzanne pulled down the View menu. It contains commands that control the way the screen looks and functions. We don't have a database open, so all but the Toolbars command are inactive at this time. Suzanne, select the Toolbars command. The submenu indicates which optional toolbars are currently active on screen. The check mark next to the word Database indicates that that toolbar is active on screen. Let's see what other toolbars we have at our disposal. Click on the Customize option. Within this dialog box, we see a list of available Access toolbars. The active toolbars have a check mark in their selection boxes. Note that the menu bar toolbox is already checked since the menu bar is always present. Make sure the database toolbar box is also checked and that all other boxes are unchecked. When you finish, click on the Close button. The database toolbar, anchored directly beneath the menu bar, gives us access to the most frequently used commands in this program. Some of these should by now be familiar to you. For those that aren't, simply move your mouse pointer on top of the desired icon. At the bottom of the screen is the status bar. It displays messages about the current access operation, plus brief messages describing the actions of selected or highlighted commands. On the right side of the status bar are boxes that show us the status of various keyboard modes. Suzanne, press your caps lock key. The abbreviation CAPS appears on the status bar to show the caps lock mode is turned on. Press the caps lock key again to turn off that mode, Suzanne. The CAPS abbreviation disappears from the status bar. Notice that Suzanne's status bar contains the abbreviation NUM. This shows that the num lock key is toggled on. We do want the num lock on for this lesson. So, viewers, if you don't see the num on your status bar, press the num lock key now. The gray space in the middle of the application window is called the workspace. The various objects created in this lesson will appear in this area. With that said, we've come to the end of our overview of the Access screen and its parts. There's plenty more to learn, so let's tackle Eddie's project. To help Eddie track his store's inventory, we'll create a custom database. Afterwards, we'll set up a table for tracking the store's tape inventory and then develop a form for the easy data entry. Before we do any of that, let's go over what a database is and how you can use it. Basically, a database is an organized collection of information associated with a specific topic. For example, a telephone book is a simple printed database that lists names, addresses, and telephone numbers in alphabetical order. Once we have entered data into an Access database, we can recombine and use that data in all kinds of ways. For example, we can do queries that let us pull out records that meet certain criteria, or print a wide variety of customized reports. Now that we know what we are dealing with, let's create a database for Rewind videos. Suzanne, click on the New Database icon. This brings up the New Database dialog box. The General tab should be active. If it isn't, click on it. Double-click on the blank database icon to bring up the File New Database dialog box.
This looks like a standard Windows save-in box, Professor, but we haven't created anything yet. So what are we saving?
Good question, Suzanne. Access is different from other applications like word processing or spreadsheets. In those applications, you start by creating a document or spreadsheet, then name it and save it. In Access, you start by naming and saving the database itself. The database acts like a shell or framework that can hold any number of related objects. Access defines an object as something that you can manipulate as a unit. Tables, forms, queries, and reports are all examples of database objects. As you notice, Suzanne, the File New Database window looks like a standard Windows Save As dialog box. As usual, the Save In area indicates where our file will be saved. We are going to save this file to floppy disk, so we need to specify that drive. Suzanne, click on the Save In drop-down list arrow. With this list, you can select any storage location on your system. Each person's computer will have a different assortment of storage areas listed here. Nevertheless, one of the choices will be a 3.5 floppy A drive. Suzanne, insert your blank formatted disk in your system's floppy drive and then click on the A drive selection. Since there are no existing files or folders on the new disk, the Files and Folders area remains blank. To the right of the Save In window is the Up One Level icon. It allows us to walk up the tree structure from our current location. At this time, clicking on that icon moves us up one level to the Windows 95 My Computer. Everyone should now see a listing within the Files and Folders area of all the available drives on his or her system. We're still saving the database file to floppy disks, so double-click on that drive. The next icon is the Look in Favorites icon. If you have designated selected storage areas as a favorite place to save files, clicking on this icon would display those locations in the Files and Folders area. We won't concern ourselves with doing that in this lesson, so let's move on. Next is the Create New Folder icon. We want to create a folder on the floppy for our database, so click on it. Now type in Video Professor Lessons as the folder name. Press Enter to finish the job. We want to store the database file into the new folder, so select it by double-clicking on its icon. The Video Professor Lessons folder now appears in the Save In box. The next two icons to the right allow us to change the way files and folders are displayed within the Files and Folders area. The default is the List view, but we can also select Detail view. The last two icons are the Properties icon and the Commands and Settings icon. Clicking on the Properties icon displays the properties of any existing databases, such as the size and when the database was created. The Commands and Settings icon would let us access commands for sorting files and working with networks. At the bottom left of this box is the File Name box. Double-click on the generic file name that appears there, and then type in Rewind Videos as the file name. Type it just as you see it on Suzanne's screen. When you finish typing the name, click on the Create button or simply press your Enter key. Access saves the file to disk and opens the database window. The tabs across the top indicate the different types of objects that the database can contain. The Tables tab is already selected because building one or more tables is the starting point for creating any database. Tables define the structure of the database and provide a basis for creating other database objects such as forms, queries, and reports. It's pretty obvious where we must start, so let's create a table. Access uses tables to store all of our data. We can create different tables for the different sorts of information we want our database to contain, then combine and use that data in different ways. For this lesson, we will build just one table, the one that Eddie will use to track Rewind Video's tape inventory. Make sure the Tables tab is selected and then click on the New button. The New Table dialog box gives us different options for creating an access table. The preview area on the left displays a short synopsis of each option as it is highlighted within the option window. Click on the Design View option and then click the OK button. This opens the Table Design dialog box, which allows us to create fields and set field properties. Access automatically changes the toolbar to correspond to the current operation. This is the Table Design toolbar. At the bottom of the screen, the status bar confirms that this is Design View, and that is where we create or modify a table's fields.
Professor, what is a field?
Good question, Suzanne. A field is like a container that holds a certain type of information, such as a name, a phone number, or a zip code. A set of these information units that relates to a single item or individual is a record. Let's go back to our example of a phone book. In the white pages, each person's record contains 4 fields: last name, first name, street address, and phone number. Viewers, if the Table Design window does not fill your screen, click on the Maximize icon to enlarge it now. The top half of the window contains columns for the field names, their data type, and an area where you can describe the field's purpose. Since we will have multiple copies of many titles, we need some way to identify each individual copy. We can do this by having Access assign a unique number to each tape. So let's start with a field for the identification number. Let's title this field Tape ID. Type that now as you see Suzanne doing. Access doesn't care whether you use upper or lowercase or a combination for field names, but I think using initial caps looks best. So capitalize the T in tape and the letter I. Now press your Enter or Tab key. The insertion point moves to the data type column. The data type tells Access what type of information this field will contain. Examples of data types include dates, numbers, currency, and text. When you define a field as a particular data type, Access will only allow that type of information to be entered into the field. Access won't allow you to enter a number or a name in a field that has been defined as a date. We're going to use several different data types in our tape inventory table. Suzanne, click on the down arrow at the right of the data type column. This is the list of possible data types that we designate. We want Access to automatically assign a unique number to each tape. The Auto Number option performs that action, so click on it. Now look at the Field Properties box. Access has designated default field properties for automatic numbering.
Field properties, what are those?
Field properties specify what kind of information goes in a field and how that data will be stored, handled, and displayed. The properties that you can set for each field are determined by the field's data type. We'll see how it works as we go along. The field properties for the auto number field will use integers or whole numbers, and it will assign the numbers by increments, which means it will increase the previous number by 1 for each new tape. We'll leave these defaults, but there is one property we want to define ourselves. Suzanne, click in the entry box for the caption property. This caption tells Access how to label this field in the data entry table and its forms. If we don't enter anything for the caption, Access will use the field name as the label. Let's make the label more user-friendly. Suzanne, type tape ID number as the caption, and this time put a space between the words. When done, click on the description column for the first field. The description is optional, but it will help clarify what goes in the field for anyone who might enter or use information in the table later. Suzanne, type unique tape identification number for the description. This information will appear on the left side of the status bar whenever you select that particular field while working in the table view. A description can be up to 255 characters long. When you are done, press the Tab or Enter key to move the insertion point to the next row so we can enter the second field in our table. For our second field name, type the word Title. Once done, press Tab or Enter to move the data type column. Once again, the text data type is selected for us. The text data type stores alphanumeric characters and non-calculated numbers. It is the most flexible data type and the one that is used most often, so Access uses it as the default setting. It is also the kind of information we want in this field, so we'll stick with the default. A glance at the Field Properties box tells us that the default field size for a text field is 50 characters. We can use up to 255, but I think 50 will be enough for most video titles. We can change it later if it's not. Suzanne, we don't need a description for this field, so go ahead and press Tab or Enter twice. I think it would be useful to add a field here that tells us when Eddie bought the tape for the store. So let's call this field Purchase Date. Type that for the field name. When you're done, move to the data tape column and click on its down arrow. This field should be a date time data type, so click on that listing. Now press F6 to move the cursor to the Format box in the Field Properties window. And then click on that field's drop-down arrow. Access gives us several date and time formats to choose from, along with examples of each one. The short date is the easiest to enter, so we'll use that. Click on it, Suzanne. Eddie opened his video store a few years ago, but we're just now computerizing his records. It would be too time-consuming to go back and look up the purchase date for every tape. Instead, we're going to use January 2nd of this year as the purchase date for all the tapes in Rewind Video's existing inventory. When Eddie buys new tapes, he can enter the actual purchase date for those.
That sounds reasonable, Professor, but does that mean I'll have to keep typing the same date over and over?
Actually, we have a way around that, Suzanne. We can set January 2nd, 1998 as the default date for this field. And after we finish entering our existing tapes, we can come back and delete the default. Access makes those kinds of changes easy. Now that that's clear, let's set the default date. Click in the box labeled Default Value. Type 1/2/98 and then press your Enter key. Access places a pound sign on both sides of the date to show that this is a date and not a mathematical expression. Let's set one more property setting. Click in the caption box and type in the words Purchase Date as the field label. Now let's make it easier for the data entry person. Click in the description field and then type Use the format M/D/YY. When you finish, press your Enter key. You know, Suzanne, it probably would be a good idea to have a field for the year the film was released as well. but I think it should go right after the title field. Click the field name column of the purchase date row. We're going to insert our new field above this one. Now pull down the Insert menu and then select the Rows option. And there's our new row. Click on that row's first column entry box and then type the words Year Released. Once done, move the insertion point to the Data Type column. We could just leave this as a text field, but it would be more useful to make it a number. By defining a field as a number data type, we can have Access perform mathematical operations using the field's data. This means, for example, that we could produce a report showing how many tapes we have from a certain year or range of years. To select the number data type, we could click on the arrow to bring up the list of data types. But there's a quicker way. Strike your keyboard's N key. See? Access filled in the data type number for us. Press your Tab key and then type the words year the film was released. When you're done, use the arrow keys to move the insertion point to the field name column of the next blank line. We're almost done with our table definition. Just a couple of more fields to go. We want to be able to organize our tapes by genre, the artistic term for category. Within it, we'll label films action-adventure films, family, thrillers, comedies, and so on. Type in the word genre, G-E-N-R-E. This will be a text field, so press Tab, Enter, or the right arrow twice to accept the data type default and move the insertion point to the description column. For the description, type in the words type of film. Finally, we want to keep track of what Eddie paid for the tapes, so when you're done with the category field description, move the insertion point to the next line and type cost as the field name. When you finish, press your Enter key, then press your C key to select the currency option from the data type list. I think we can accept the field property defaults for this field, so move to the description column and type purchase price. We want this field to contain what we paid for the tape, not what we will rent it for. Okay, that looks great, Suzanne. Before going any further, let's save our table. Click on the Save icon. It's the one that has a floppy disk on it, near the left end of the Table Design toolbar.
Professor, why is it asking for a Save As name when we already named the database?
Because we are saving the table as an object within that database, Suzanne. Remember that a database can contain any number of objects, such as tables and forms. The default name of Table 1 is not very descriptive, so enter another name that best fits our table's purpose. The easiest way to do this is to use a prefix that indicates the kind of object, combined with a name that tells us something about the data in the table. We'll use the prefix TBL for tables. And since this table holds information about Eddie's videotape inventory, we'll use the word inventory for the rest of the name. Type that now, Suzanne. Capital TBL followed by a hyphen, then the word inventory. Don't leave any spaces, but do capitalize the I in inventory. This makes it easier to read. When you're done, click on OK or press Enter to save the table. Now Access warns us we haven't defined a primary key and asks if we want to create one.
A primary key? What's that, Professor?
A primary key is a field or combination of fields that uniquely defines each record in a table. You can think of the primary key as being like the vehicle identification number on a car. There are thousands of cars that fit the description Blue Toyota Camry, for example, but each one of them has a VIN number that identifies that particular car. To be used as a primary key, a field must meet two conditions. First, it must contain data that is unique for each record in the table. The video title field, for example, would not make a good primary key because we could have more than one tape with the same title. Second, the field can never be empty. There must be an entry in the field for every record in the table. You don't have to create a primary key, but without one, the program will take longer to search for and sort records. Also, you must have a primary key if you plan to relate data in the table to data in other tables in the database. We will be creating other tables and relating them to this one in a later lesson, so a primary key is definitely called for. Click Yes. Remember that our table contains an auto number field, the tape number field, That access automatically fills with a unique number for every record. Since it meets the conditions, access automatically makes that field the primary key. See? A small key symbol has appeared next to the tape number field to show that it is the primary key.
Professor, what if we wanted a different field to be the primary key? Could we do that?
Yes, we could, Suzanne. We could designate any field or combination of fields to be the key as long as they meet the two conditions. It must contain data that is unique for each record in the table, and the field can never be empty. There must be an entry in the field for every record in the table. For example, let's say that the genre field meets the key conditions. To make that field the primary key, simply click on the gray box to the left of the field column for genre, and then click on the primary key icon. It's located on the database toolbar and has a key on it. The primary key designation now appears next to the genre row. Obviously, we can't use this as a primary key because genres are broad categories of file types, so they are apt to be replaced in multiple records. So we'll go back to the tape number field. Click on the gray box for that field, Suzanne, then click on the primary key icon. In situations where you can't guarantee the uniqueness of any single field, you may be able to designate two or more fields as the primary key. If you are in doubt about whether you can select an appropriate combination of fields for a multiple field primary key, you should probably add an auto number field and designate it as the primary key instead. Now that we've entered appropriate fields and have designated one of them as a primary key, we've completed the first step in creating our database. We've defined a structure to hold our data. Now let's try entering some information. Before we can enter records, we must switch to a different view of our table. Pull down the View menu and then click on the Datasheet View option. Click Yes to save our design. Viewers, if your datasheet window does not fill the screen, click on the Maximize icon to enlarge it now. This view gives us a nice picture of how the table is structured. The 6 fields we defined appear as column headings across the top of the table. Remember earlier that we learned a record consists of a set of fields that contain information about one item or one individual? In an Access data table, each column represents one field, and each row represents one record. So in our table, each row will be a record that holds information about one videotape. The tape number field in the first row is already selected. However, since this is an auto number field, Access will fill it in for us. So just press Tab, Enter, or the right arrow to move the title field. Suzanne typed Grumpy Old Men for our first title. Notice that as soon as you start to type, Access puts a 1 in the auto number field. Look at the gray column to the left of the first field column. The little pencil symbol in this row indicates that we're writing a new record into the database. The next row is showing, but it has an asterisk. This is the new record indicator. To move to the next field, you can press Enter, Tab, or your right arrow key, just as you could when you were defining the table. Look at the left side of the status bar, Suzanne. This is the description we entered for this field. Year the film was released. Notice that this field also has a default entry of 0 because we defined it as a number. Grumpy Old Men came out in 1993, so type that year now. The next field already contains our default purchase date, 1/2/98, so we can skip over that field and go to the genre field. Grumpy Old Men is a comedy, so type comedy for the category and move the insertion point to the cost field. The tape costs $29, so type in 2 and a 9. You can use either the keyboard or the number keys to type the number. Now press Enter. Access automatically formats this field as currency, since that's the data type we chose when we defined this field. The insertion point is now in the first field for the second record. The gray column shows an arrow to indicate that this row is now active. The pencil doesn't appear because we haven't written anything in this record yet. Look at the bottom of this window, Suzanne. The navigation box tells us that we're now on record number 2. Press Tab, Enter, or the right arrow to skip the tape number field, since that gets filled automatically. We have 2 copies of Grumpy Old Men. All of the information is the same for both copies, so we can save some data entry time by simply copying the first record. Suzanne, right-click on the gray box next to record number 1. This selects the record and opens up a shortcut menu. Click on the copy command, and then right-click on the gray box next to the blank record row. When the shortcut menu opens, click on the paste command. That's all there is to it. Access copied the information from the first record and assign a new tape number to the second record. The auto number field identifies these as separate records, even though the other fields are the same. It's looking good so far, Suzanne. Let's move to the next row and enter another tape. Skip to the title field and type Die Hard with a Vengeance. By the way, when you are entering fields in a database, be careful not to insert spaces except where they are needed to separate words. Remember that to a computer, a space is a character. Unwanted spaces can cause problems when you are sorting or selecting records, especially if they come at the beginning of a field. In the year field, type 1995. Then skip to the category field and type Action/Adventure.
Professor, how am I going to keep all these categories straight?
That's a good question, Suzanne, especially since consistency is extremely important when you are entering information into a database. If you vary the genre or category names even a little, movies that are the same type will sort in different genre. For example, you could have some movies identified as romances and others as love stories, even though they could really be in the same category. There is a way around this problem, and it will actually make data entry even easier. We're going to create a lookup field, but to do that, we'll have to go back to the design view of our table.
But Professor, will that make us lose the information we already entered?
No, it won't affect our data at all, Suzanne. Access lets you change the table's design even after you've started entering information. There is a caveat, though. If you delete a field that had data in it, you would lose that data in that field. Also, changing a field's data type could cause you to lose any data in that field. Click on the View button. It's the one at the far left of the toolbar. Now click in the Data Type column for the Genre field, and then click on the down arrow to see the Data Types list. Click on the Lookup Wizard option. It's the last one on the list. The Access Wizard is going to help us create a drop-down list for the Genre field. So during data entry, we'll be able to choose from a consistent set of categories.
Professor, what does it mean when it says List of Values?
Value means the information that is entered into a field, Suzanne. For instance, the value for the title field in our first two records is Grumpy Old Men. The value for the year field in each of those records is 1993. For the category field, the possible values are the different film types: action, adventure, children's, and so on. We want to type in the values for our category list, so click on the lower radio button, then click Next or press Enter. We only want one column of values, so leave the 1 in the Number of Columns box and then click in the Entry box underneath the Column 1 heading. This list will be easiest to use if it's in alphabetical order, so we'll enter the categories that way. Type Action/Adventure for the first one. Notice that when you start to type, a pencil symbol appears in the gray column and a blank new line appears underneath, just like when you were entering data into the inventory table. Okay, now press Tab or the down arrow to move to the next line. Don't press Enter here. If you do, Access will assume that you're done entering the lookup list. Type Children's for the second category. Move to the next row and type Classic. Continue entering the film genres as you see them on the screen. If you need more time, pause the lesson until you finish typing all of the genre names. When you are finished entering the genres, click on the Next button. The wizard asks what we want to label the lookup column. Genre is the label we want, so click Finish or press Enter. That's all there is to it. Now let's go back and finish entering our records. Click on the View button. We want to save our changes, so click Yes. Now click in the Category field for our Die Hard with a Vengeance record. As we can see here, this field now has a drop-down list attached to it. Click on its drop-down arrow, Suzanne. And there is the drop-down list of genres, just as we created it. That should make it easy to be consistent. This is an action-adventure movie, so click on that choice, then move the insertion point to the cost field and type $39. When you finish, press your Enter key.
Professor, I can't see all the titles. Will this affect my database?
No, Suzanne, all of your data is intact just as you entered it. However, if we want to see more of the entries while in this view, we can change how the table and its contents are displayed. By default, all of the columns in the data sheet view are the same size. This means some of the columns are too wide for the data we've entered and others are too narrow. Suzanne, let's change the genre column so we can see all of its category names. See the lines that separate the column headers on the gray header row that contains our field names? Move your mouse pointer on the line that separates the category column from the cost column. See how the pointer changes to a double-headed arrow? That's a standard Windows indicator that you can change the size of an object. Now drag the mouse to the right until you can see all of the words Action Adventure in the last record, then release it. You want to be able to see the entire entry but not leave too much space on either side of it. In this case, Access leaves extra space on the right to accommodate the arrow for the drop-down list. That's one way to change the column width, but there's even an easier way. Suzanne, click on the title label in the header row. Once done, pull down the Format menu and choose the Column Width option. In the Column Width dialog box, click on the Best Fit button. There! Now the titles are completely visible. When you use the Best Fit feature, Access automatically adjusts a column so you can see the longest entry. Suzanne used the two-sided arrow or the Best Fit feature to enlarge the tape ID number field enough that we can see the entire header label. I don't think we need to make any more changes, so click on the table window's close icon in the upper right-hand corner. We do want to save our layout changes, so click Yes. And the table appears as an object in the database window. Useful as our table is, it's only the beginning of what we can do with Access 97. Based on the data within the table, we can create other Access objects, such as forms, queries, and reports. For the latter part of this lesson, we'll concentrate on creating and modifying a form. From what we've done so far, you've probably realized that data entry can be the most time-consuming step of creating a database. One way to make entering and viewing data easier is to create a form.
What exactly is a form, Professor?
You've used forms many times before, Suzanne. A form is a document that has spaces for you to fill in specific information. Examples of forms include job and credit applications, tax returns, and subscription forms you find in magazines. An Access form looks a lot like these hard copy forms, except that it is on the computer screen. The spaces that you fill in are the fields from your database tables. The advantage of a form is that it displays information one record at a time instead of multiple records like the datasheet view. This makes it much easier to enter, edit, and view records, especially if a table has too many columns to fit easily on the screen. Access forms can be connected to multiple tables, or one table can have fields in different forms. For now, since we have only one table, we'll do a single form that uses all of the fields. Make sure the videotape inventory table is highlighted in the database window, and then click on the Auto Form icon. It's the second one from the right end of the database toolbar with the lightning symbol. It's the quickest and easiest way to create an Access form. That's all you have to do, Suzanne. Access automatically created a simple form based on the fields in our videotape inventory table. The form is showing the data from the first record we entered. Each field has a label and an entry box. Also, notice that the category field comes complete with a lookup list that we created earlier. And we have yet another version of the toolbar to use with this view of our database. The description text we entered for the tape number field is displayed once again on the status bar. The navigation buttons at the bottom of the form allow us to display other records or move to the end of the table so we can start entering new records. Suzanne, click on the right arrow with the asterisk next to it. This moves us to the end of the table where we have a blank row to enter data into. Suzanne, press Tab or Enter to move to the title field. Type the title, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Again, the auto number field changes to the next record number as soon as you start typing. Press Tab or Enter to move to the year field, and then type the year 1948. Press Tab or Enter twice to accept the default purchase date. In the category field, type CL. Access fills in the correct category from our drop-down list, Classic. Finally, move to the cost field and type 35. That's all there is to it. We have some more records to enter, but first I think we need to add a field to our form. Many of the tapes in our inventory are closed captioned for hearing impaired viewers. It would be useful to have that information in our database. We can't add a field from the form view though. We have to go back to the table design view. First, we need to close the form. Click on the close icon in the upper right corner, Suzanne. Once again, Access prompts us to save our work. Click Yes when the Save Changes dialog box appears. The Save As box shows the default name TBL Inventory, since this form is based on that table. Suzanne, highlight the table's TBL and then type a capital F, R, and M. The FRM prefix indicates that this is a form, but we'll keep the inventory part of the name to show that it is connected to the inventory table. Click on OK. Access saves the form as another object in our Rewind Videos database file, not as a separate file, and displays the database window. Suzanne, click on the Forms tab. And there is our form in the object list. Now let's add the field to our table. Suzanne, click on the Tables tab. Click on the TBL Inventory Table object, then click on the Design button. It appears on the right side of the box. Here we are back at the Table Design view. We're going to add a logical field that we can use to identify whether a tape is closed captioned. A logical field is an easy way to enter the yes, no, or true-false type information quickly. We'll put the field at the end of the table. Suzanne, click in the field name column in the last row and type capital C-L-O-S-E, capital C-A-P as the field name. Move the insertion point to the data type column. Click on the down arrow to display the data types list and then choose the yes-no option. I think the field label is self-explanatory, so we can skip the description for this field. Instead, click in the caption box that appears in the Properties area and then type Closed Captioned for the field label. Now let's take a look at how our table has changed. Suzanne, click on the View button. Click Yes to save the changes. Now scroll the table to the left until the last column comes into view.
Professor, what are all those little boxes?
They are yes-no checkboxes, Suzanne. If a box is checked, it means the value for the field is yes. Access automatically sets the default value for a logic field to no, so all of the boxes are unchecked. One of our tapes is closed captioned though, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Click on the checkbox for that record to check it. With that done, let's go back to our form. Click on the datasheet window's close icon, Suzanne.
It didn't ask me whether I wanted to save the table, Professor. Won't that last change be lost?
No, Suzanne. The data you entered into a table is saved automatically. Only changes to the table design itself need to be saved. Click on the Forms tab, then double-click on the FRM Inventory object. You can click on either the icon or the text.
Professor, I don't see my new field.
We created this form before we added the new field, Suzanne. To include the new field, we must either create another form using AutoForm or add the field to this one manually. Let's do the latter. We can use the Form Design view to create a new form or to change an existing form's appearance. We want to add a new field to an existing form, so click on the View button. Now let's take a look at the Form Design window. At the top of the screen is the Formatting toolbar. By using its commands, we can change text color, background color, alignment, as well as apply special effects to the various objects and controls that make up a form. Directly beneath the Formatting toolbar is the Form Design toolbar. By accessing its commands, we can further define the form's functionality. In addition to the standard cut, copy, and paste commands, it allows us to add hyperlinks and change the properties of the form's various elements. The rulers at the top and along the left side of the form design window help us to accurately align control objects such as labels and fields. The lines and small dots in the blank area of the form is called the grid. All the elements that make up a form are composed on this area. To the right of the grid, we see two floating toolbars. The nearest one to the grid is the toolbox. It contains design objects such as fields, text, and boxes that can be placed in a form. Some of the buttons in the toolbox may seem familiar if you've used a drawing program. Others are specific to designing a database form. To the right of the toolbox is the field box. It displays the list of fields that are available to use in this form. Viewers, if the rulers, grid, toolbox, or field list box do not appear on your screen, pull down the View menu. You want to toggle these on. The field list box option is housed in the second section, while the rulers, grid, and toolbox options are grouped together in the third section of the menu. If any of these four options are not selected, click on them now. You will need to pull down the View menu separately to select each option. If all four are already selected, close the View menu by pressing your Escape key twice. The field box and toolbox are floating toolbars, which means we can click on their respective title bars and drag them to any location on the screen. Let's anchor the toolbox at the bottom. Suzanne placed the mouse pointer on the toolbox's title bar. Now click and drag the outline to the bottom of the window. When it changes shape, release the mouse button. We're going to drag a control from the field list box onto the grid. So we'll allow this toolbar to float on the desktop for a while.
What is a control, Professor?
Remember that Access is an object-oriented program. The table we created is one object, and the form is another. The field boxes and labels that appear in forms and reports are objects which Access calls controls. We can move controls around and change their properties to get just the appearance we want. Changing the positions and properties of the fields and labels on this form has no effect on the original table or the data we entered. To make room for another control, we need to enlarge the grid area. By doing so, we also change the size of the form. Suzanne, move your mouse to the lower right-hand corner of the grid. Once it turns into a four-sided arrow, click and drag the grid outline down and to the right. Release your mouse button when the right edge of the darkened area that appears on the horizontal ruler reaches the 4-inch mark, and the bottom edge of the darkened area appearing on the vertical ruler reaches the 2.5-inch mark. Now let's add the closed caption field from our table. Our closed caption field is the last one on the list. Click on that and keep the mouse button pressed down, Suzanne. Now drag the mouse pointer out onto the grid. See how it changes into the little bar? Drag that bar until its left side is even with the other fields and just below the cost field. Use the grid dots to line it up. Then release the mouse. We now have a label representing the closed caption field, in addition to a checkbox that indicates if the tape is closed captioned or not. Each of these is a control. The checkbox is a control, the label for each field is a control, and the field entry boxes are controls. Those little black boxes around the edges of the field and labels controls are called handles. When you see them, it means the control is selected. Suzanne, move the mouse pointer over the middle of the checkbox until you see a little black hand appear. It allows us to move the selected label and its corresponding field box as one. Suzanne, click and drag the hand pointer right until the left side of the checkbox aligns with the left side of the other field boxes, and one dotted line under the cost field box. Now let's move the closed caption label so it lines up with the other labels. Click on the closed caption label control and then move the mouse pointer so it's right over the gray box in the upper left corner of the selected label control. The hand with one finger means that only the label control will move. Click and drag it to the left until it is lined up with the other labels and one dotted line under the cost label. You can move any control on a form this way. Click on it to select it, then move the mouse pointer over the control until it turns into a hand, and then drag the control to where you want it. If more than one control object is selected, such as a field and label set, remember to watch the hand symbol. A full hand means all of the selected controls will move together as a group. A one-fingered hand means only that control will move. Suzanne, the closed caption checkbox is a little too high on the grid. Move it down a little so it aligns better with its label. Now that we have all the fields, let's add a title to our form. First, we need to make some space by moving all of the fields and their labels down. We can move all the fields and labels down one set at a time, but I've got a better way. Pull down the Edit menu, and then click on the Select All command. Now all of the fields and their labels will behave like one object. Suzanne, move the mouse pointer onto one of the labels until you see the little hand. Now click and hold your mouse button. Before we move the controls, take a look at the rulers. The shaded areas that appear on them represent the selected control's height and width. They allow us to position the selected control or controls at a specific measurement. You may have noticed them when moving the closed caption controls. With that said, drag the whole group down until the bottom edge of the shaded area lines up with the 2 3/8 inch mark on the vertical ruler and the left edge of the horizontal shaded bar on the 3/8 inch mark. That looks better. Now let's add our title. We'll use a toolbox tool to do that. Suzanne, click on the label tool icon. It's the one with the italicized letters on it. Move the mouse pointer onto the grid. See how it changes to a capital A with a little crosshatch marker? Move the pointer so the crosshatch is lined up with the 3/8 inch mark on the horizontal ruler and the 1/4 inch mark on the vertical ruler. Then click the mouse button. The little slot is a text box that we can fill with the title. Type Rewind Videos Tape Inventory and then press Enter. Our title becomes another control object and it's easily selected. Let's change some of the title's properties to make it stand out more. We'll start by changing the font size. The quickest way to change font properties for a control is with the formatting toolbar, so we'll use that, Suzanne. Click on the down arrow from the font size box. 12 point sounds about right for the title. Click on that, Suzanne.
Our title doesn't fit in the box, Professor. Does that mean we have to change it back to the smaller font?
No, Suzanne. We can simply change the size of the box. In fact, you can change the size of any control. Move the mouse pointer over the lower right-hand corner of the title object until you see a two-way diagonal arrow. Use the arrow to drag the outline to the 3-inch mark on the horizontal ruler and 1/2 inch mark on the vertical ruler. Now let's boldface the title and center it inside the text box. Make sure the title control is still selected. Then click on the bold button on the formatting bar. It's the one with the large B. With that done, click the center alignment icon, the one that shows the centered lines of text. When you're done, click outside the control to deselect it. There, that makes the title stand out. We can change the properties of any control object in the form this way. In addition to font size and type, we can also change the colors of the field boxes and labels. We can change the properties of a single control, a couple of controls, or a group of controls. If we select a number of controls as a group, we can change all of their properties at once. Let's try that. Suzanne, pull down the Edit menu and click on the Select All option. Now click on the down arrow for the Special Effects icon. It is the last button on the formatting toolbar. I like the shadowed effect. It's the one in the lower left corner. Click on that one now, Suzanne. Then click outside the group to deselect it.
Uh-oh, Professor. It looks like some of the labels were cut off when we added the 3D effect.
That's easy to fix, Suzanne. Press your Control and A keys together to activate the Select All command. Now move your mouse pointer over one of the selected objects and then click the right mouse button to bring up the shortcut menu. See the size option near the middle of the menu? Click on it. Now click on the To Fit option and click outside the group to deselect it. There. Access expanded the control boxes so that all the text is visible. Now let's take a look at the form's background. We can change its properties as well. This gray looks sort of drab, so let's change the color to something more inviting. Suzanne, click on the drop-down arrow for the Fill Back control icon. It's on the formatting toolbar just to the right of the alignment commands. We can choose any color from this palette for our background. How about the shade of blue-green located in the middle of the fourth column? Click on that one, Suzanne. The form's new color looks nice, but the labels aren't as prominent as before. Let's fix that. Press your Control and A keys together again. Now select white from the Fill Back palette. Click outside the selection. That looks much better than when we started. As you can see, Access lets you control just about any aspect of a form's appearance. We can also add other kinds of controls such as graphic images and command buttons. I think this form looks pretty good now, so let's save it and go back to regular form view. Click the Save button to save our changes, then click the View button. And here is our completed form, complete with the title and the closed caption checkbox we just added. Also notice that the first record in our inventory table is displayed. Suzanne, click the right navigation arrow a couple of times to move through the other records. Notice that the closed caption and checkbox is checked for the Die Hard with a Vengeance tape. This is a good illustration of how Access constantly modifies the database and the various objects it contains. When we change one aspect of the database, it ripples through the other database objects. Now that we have our form the way we want it, let's enter some more records into the inventory table. Click on the right arrow with the asterisk to move to the next blank record in the table. Type these records as you see them on the screen. Remember that you can accept the purchase date default by just pressing Tab or Enter to skip that field. And you can enter the category either by clicking on the down arrow and choosing the correct entry from the list, or typing the first letters of the category until it appears in the field. To check the closed caption checkbox, click in the box with the mouse. To move between records, you can either press Enter after entering the closed caption field, press the down page arrow key on your keyboard, or use the navigation buttons at the bottom of the form window. Pause the lesson if you need more time to enter all the records. Now let's go back and take a look at our table. Click on the Form's Close icon, Suzanne. Now click on the Tables tab and double-click on the Videotape Inventory object. There are all of our records just as we entered them on the form.
Professor, is there any way we could put the records in a different order, say by the year they were released?
You bet, Suzanne. You can sort the records by any field you want in either ascending or descending order. Click on the Year Released column heading. This tells Access that we are going to base our sort on the data within this field. Just above the column are two sorting command icons, ascending and descending. Click on the Sort Ascending command. The inventory table's records now are sorted in order from earliest to latest. Casablanca now appears as the first record in the table. Notice that all the other records are intact. In fact, the records and the way they are stored in the table have not changed at all. The only thing that has changed is the order in which the records are displayed. Suzanne, click on the Year Release column header again. Now click on the Sort Descending command. Once again, the records are organized for us in a different sort order. Now let's put the records back to the original sort. Right-click on the Tape ID Number column header. This selects the column and opens a shortcut menu. Click on the Sort Ascending command. Our records are back in their original order. Click on the Save icon. Suzanne, now that we know how to create a table and enter data into it, the next step is to get information out of the table. And that's what we'll look at in my Level 2 lesson on Access 97. Thank you for your assistance, Suzanne, and thanks everybody for being such good students. I hope you've enjoyed our exploration of Access 97. And remember, there is always more you can learn from me, the Video Professor.
Thanks for trying Video Professor's Computer Learning CD. We know that you'll find it the quickest and easiest way to learn computers, as millions of others have. As an added bonus, we've included 30 free days of unlimited internet access with Video Professor Online right on this CD-ROM. And you can choose another CD free just for trying this service. Even if you're already online, we'd like you to try Video Professor Online for these great reasons. Free unlimited access for 30 days. 24-hour live technical support, no bothersome advertisements on your homepage, guaranteed fast connections, email with automatic mail announcer, and a low monthly rate if you decide to stay connected with VPOL after your free trial period. All you have to do is click on the gold Install VPOL Free button on your lesson menu. It's easy. All you need to do is make sure your modem is connected to a phone line. And after you sign up, don't forget to send in your coupon for a free CD-ROM of your choice. This coupon was included in the package you just received from Video Professor. Enjoy your computer learning and your free Video Professor Online internet access.